I'm Alex Gillingham. I'm the Foundations of Clinical Medicine lead for the module and also a senior lecturer at St George's. For the team-based learning, I was part of the team that helped bring the TBL sessions to the Physician Associate Programme at St George's, and we worked alongside the e-learning team as well to do that. The TBL process has been definitely a learning curve for us, but in a good way. We wanted to use TBL to improve the dynamicness of the teaching sessions for students, particularly in the small group learning, and help bring some of the clinical learning a bit more to life, bring in some expertise, and it also reduce the amount of dependency we have on facilitators for delivering some of that teaching material. So the TBL was really a way to help deliver case-based learning to students in a large number, using less facilitators but also keeping it clinically relevant and enabling the students to get feedback during the session on their own knowledge of the clinical material. So the main difference between TBL and PBL is, on first look, it's the setup of the room. So in PBL it's all small groups and they're in individual rooms with their own facilitator. In team-based learning, all of the class is together in one room, but they're split up into different groups within that space, and there's one facilitator, or two in our case, and then a clinical expert as well. So the layout's very different. The other difference for team-based learning is there is an additional assessment aspect. So the students at the start of the session have a individual quiz that they do. They then do a quiz as a team, and that gives them immediate feedback about their own knowledge of the subject. They've also had some preparation material to use beforehand, so they're getting to draw on that whilst they take the assessment quiz. And then what follows is not dissimilar to PBL in that they run through a clinical case. So this is what we call application exercise in team-based learning. And it's a case-based online scenario that has branches within it. So there's different points where the students have to decide what to do and make a clinical decision. And that's not dissimilar to PBL, but they do that as a team. They decide on what to do, and then we share the decision that each team has made, and we have a discussion about why and facilitate the different rationale behind it. And then we have the expert facilitator to discuss the sort of clinical relevance and their own thoughts on that aspect of medicine and why that matters. So the expert facilitator is an additional element in team-based learning, and the expert facilitator or content expert is really there to bring in a clinical relevance and knowledge to the session. They are a clinician in practice in that area, so in this case it was in cardiovascular medicine, and they are there for us to help highlight in the discussion about the reality of maybe a process or a decision aspect, or highlight a particularly important part of the process. They're also there on hand to help answer questions from students. So for myself as a facilitator, I can focus on my role in facilitation and then let the content expert use their expertise and their knowledge to do that part. So it's really helpful for the students to have someone who's living this situation in their actual job to be able to answer their questions whilst they're going through the case. What worked well for the TBL was generally that the IT was actually really good. The Open Labyrinth software, Canvas software, and the Mentimeter software generally worked really well. There were some small things we're going to change, but actually the students' access to it and our use of it was great. The setup of the room and the way the teams were set up worked well, and the content of the actual case itself was good, and the assessment content, so the IRAT and the TRAT content was really good. We worked hard to make that fit well with the curriculum, so that worked really well. There were some challenges with the TBL. Some of them are fixable. For example, the room setup, we had quite a lot of noise happening with the students, heatedly discussing things. We ended up having to get microphones to be heard over the group, and also for students to be able to hear the facilitator in the large room. So that's an easy thing to fix. There was also some issues with the size of the groups. We think we might make them a bit smaller so that the group discussions can be a little bit easier, and that students don't get left out so easily, that everyone can contribute and we can see that happening a bit more. I think it's a fantastic way to facilitate students with case-based learning, and I think it might be really useful for different systems going through and kind of honing students' knowledge, giving them a kind of checkpoint in their learning. So I could see us using this maybe once every term, or at the end of a big module, as a way to kind of consolidate their knowledge and bring it all together. And that's particularly with the content experts and the assessment aspect of it is really the big change that's been most useful that I can see for that. I think the takeaway learning is that the TBL is really for collaborative learning for the students, and so making sure that the students' expectations are what you want them, that they have the information they need to know what to expect, that you're making the session fit within your curriculum and what you want the students to learn, that you're using the technology that you want to use to enable that to happen. But you don't have to. You can also use old school paper and pen and simple things like that as well to facilitate the session that way.